So hello everyone and welcome to the South by Southwest panel hosted by Open Austria on behalf of the Grid, where we discuss a new digital humanism, art meets tech meets policy. My name is Clara Bloom. I'm head of the Art and Tech Lab at Open Austria, the Austrian Innovation Office in Silicon Valley. Together with my European colleagues at Unique Silicon Valley, we founded the Grid, a global network connecting art, tech, and policy in an effort to break out of our silos and engage in interdisciplinary collaboration that positively shapes technology of the future. Before I proceed to introduce today's panelists, I want to encourage our audience to stick around for the EVE Award ceremony. EVE is a new annual prize by the Grid, for the first time awarded at South by Southwest, which is exciting. And we're celebrating collaborative artworks that push the envelope of human and artificial creativity. But now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our esteemed guests, each representing one of the three silos that the Grid connects through the lens of a new digital humanism. So joining us from the policy realm of Washington, D.C. is EU Ambassador to the United States, Stavros Lambrinidis. Welcome, Ambassador.
Nice to be here.
Joining us from Linz in Austria is Gerfried Stocker, Artistic Director of the legendary art and tech institution, Ars Electronica. Welcome, Gerfried. And joining us from San Francisco, the beating heart of Silicon Valley, is Eric Loeb, Executive Vice President for Government Affairs at Salesforce. So welcome, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you join this important conversation. And I would like to kick off this first round of questions with a question for Eric. So Eric, the year 2020 has given testimony to the fact that humanity is facing a variety of daunting challenges. Technology can be both part of the solution or part of the problem. And over the last couple of years, we've seen a drastic shift in how citizens around the world experience their relationship to technology. Silicon Valley's universally lauded mantra to move fast and break things has run its course. We now call it the techlash that has created this new paradigm for technology, no longer built on excitement, but distrust. So Eric, with your extensive experience working within tech, how would you judge the situation? What really defines the current crisis in technology?
Oh, Clara, thank you. First of all, it's great to see you today, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and to have this chance to speak with such a wonderful group. So really appreciate this. And your question, it's of course timely, it's important, and the crisis has many sources. Perhaps most relevant for what we're talking about today in our conversation, one source is a lack of perspective, perhaps a failure to see the potential that technology has from a variety of different angles. Not only the good, of course, that technology can do, but also to see the dimension of risk that it can create. And a need for some humility about the consequences of both that good and risk as technology scales up. So that's the first point. We need to internalize this fact that technology, it's central to society now. And if anything, this past year, as we've all adapted with COVID, has accelerated that digital transformation and accelerated the scale and centrality. So this is no longer a matter that is at the periphery of public policy and of the importance to public officials. It's intertwined with the most important issues that policymakers face. And that means that we need to recognize the impact and the responsibility that we have and have a vision about future potential impact as well, good and bad. Doing this with some sense of North Star about what your values are and how you're going to guide your business decisions through that. So I think that that's super important. And I'll just close now by tying thoughts together of your question and the grid itself. That's why I find the work of the Grid so interesting. It is bringing together different perspectives, and that's the origin of the crisis here, inadequate perspective. So art, policy, technology, addressing the crisis in technology, it starts with having different perspectives and reducing your blind spots.
That is fascinating. Thank you, Eric. You've mentioned this entrenchment, almost this silos that have created and were part of this current crisis of technology. And you've also mentioned that it's important to have a North Star. And that's a wonderful segue for my question for Ambassador Lambrinidis. Your experience as current ambassador of the European Union to the United States and your previous experience as the EU's special representative for human rights, it gives you a unique perspective and insight into this concept of humanism as part of the policymaking process in both Europe and the United States. In fact, globally, there's a growing fear that our humanity is missing in the development of new tech tools. So Europe now strives to be fit for the digital age, and in doing so tries to preserve the basic human rights of its citizens, wanting to ensure that technology works for the people and not the other way around. My question to you would be, can you tell us more about this European approach to technology?
So thanks, Clara, absolutely, and thanks for having me with you today. And if there was any need to prove to our audience that I am the government guy here, I have the tie, I have the flags, so no one can confuse me for the crazy scientist or the visionary, humanist or business person. Look, I start with three principles. The first one, as far as I'm concerned, is that in a democracy, it is citizens who are supposed to be observing, judging the actions, the thoughts, the practices of their governments, of their companies, and not the governments or companies, the ones who are supposed to judge and observe every day the thoughts and actions of the citizens. If you get to that, you have, in a sense, flipped democracy on its head. My second principle is that innovation is humongously positive and humongously important. And Europe is, for decades, investing in it supremely successfully. But at the same time, again, in a democracy, it is not the presence of any particular technology that should determine its use, but it again should be citizens that determine how any new technology is being used. And the fundamental thing behind that is that any new technology has to make a positive difference to our lives, ideally. If it makes them worse, if it makes them more divided, if it makes them poorer, if it makes them more inequitable, if it withdraws rights, it's not okay. But if it promotes all those things, it's absolutely fantastic. The third principle, coming to rights, is that all the rights that we enjoy offline, we should be able to enjoy online as well. Mm-hmm. If you cannot follow me, throughout my day and take notes of what I do and photos of me all the time and come in my house and check me out whenever you want to, not whenever I want to, well, you shouldn't be able to do that online as well. I got into big debates in the past when the General Data Protection Regulation the privacy regulation of the EU came out. At the time, not many people were for it. Now the vast majority are. And people were saying, isn't Europe just too much? If you have nothing to hide, really, you have nothing to fear. Are you a terrorist? No, I'm not. Are you an organized criminal? No, I'm not. So what's the problem? Let us follow you. Well, the problem is that if you have nothing to hide, you don't have a life. Get a life. We all have something entirely legitimate to hide in our lives. Not illegal, nothing like that. We have privacy rights. And that is how we are looking at this in Europe. Tremendously important to innovate, but make sure that innovation makes lives better. Now, practically, we came out very recently with the European Democracy Action Plan. That's a set of actions to take to ensure that we preserve media pluralism, that we protect freedom of expression, but we also fight online disinformation. We have come out with legislative proposals, the Digital Market Act and Digital Services Act. The Digital Services Act looked at protecting consumers, among other things, from harmful goods. It looks at again protecting consumers of information from hate and hate-inducing algorithms. The Digital Market Act strives to create innovation based on clear rules, because honestly, If you have gatekeepers out there who could be supremely successful and very, very good at many things, but that strangle in the end of the day the innovative spirit of thousands of other smaller companies, that in the long term is not okay. And finally, when it comes to the future, artificial intelligence, we have a white paper out. That's what we call things, so people don't understand what they are. But fundamentally, it's, everything came out of a process of talking to business, to citizens, to civil society. What do we do with artificial intelligence in the future? We decided it has to be trustworthy. It has to be, there's got to be a human in the loop, and it's got to be equitable. As we're speaking today, standards on artificial intelligence are being placed by China, for example, in Xinjiang. They are using face recognition, voice recognition to repress people's rights. Are these the standards of the future that we will accept as Americans and Europeans? Or will we use our own values to create human-centric, human rights-centric, democratic values in these technologies? That's a debate that cannot be left. It's unfair to leave it just on the companies themselves, because as I said at the beginning, it is citizens that should be able to control that process. And so I am sort of very pleased that Europe is taking again the lead in this, and I hope together with the US.
Well, thank you so much. This is a very powerful statement. Lots of things to unwrap there, but the overarching theme clearly is the right of the citizens to put civil society back at the heart of tech development and to really work in favor, in service of humanity. A wonderful way to engage Gerfried Stocke into this discussion. Gerfried, both technology and art constantly question what it means to be human. They challenge us to rethink outdated concepts, to reevaluate our relationship to the world around us, and ultimately to also grow beyond our human limitations. But in this age of artificial intelligence, the borders between humans and machines are ever so slightly starting to blur. This development is not exclusively greeted with enthusiasm, but often with fear. It's the fear to be replaced, the fear to lose control, and the fear to lose agency. And although technology is inherently human, it's just a tool made by humans for humans, people all over the world voice the need to put the human back at the center of tech development. So you have humane technology, human-centric AI, digital humanism, and all of these concepts are gaining a lot of traction because clearly, somehow, somewhere, we've strayed from our path to build technology in service of humanity. But while technology is always human, it is not always necessarily humane. And so one of the GRID's main stakeholders is Ars Electronica, operating at the intersection of art, tech, and society for over 40 years. You're clearly the global pioneer for interdisciplinarity. Ars Electronica is also one of the first art institutions to rally many different stakeholders throughout the world around this new digital humanism. You've created a European platform for digital humanism to contribute to help mitigate the current crisis of trust, stop resigning to fears, and get us yet again excited about the potential of technology. Can you tell us more about this?
Well, yes, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me, and thank you very much for doing this really very important work to bring together people from the United States and Europe here to discuss this important development of the future of technology and humanity. Because I think this is also the main idea behind this European platform for digital humanism. It's to work together to really understand that we are not talking about opposites. I mean, humanism, humanity, and technology should be actually totally the same thing. And I think while it's very important to make clear that it's not a platform for European humanism, we have to consider, at least now in the 21st century, it's global humanism. But of course, Europe has a lot of very interesting, I think, assets to bring into this discussion. The ambassador really mentioned some very important points, and there is barely another place globally in the last many years already than Brussels and the European Union that has been really driving the reconsideration of the framework in which technology is introduced into society. So I think this is a very important point. And not at least, it's of course also, again, European tradition. I mean, humanism is closely related to the idea of Renaissance. When we talk about humanism, we have in mind people like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Brunelleschi. And of course, this type of people we had in other cultures as well. But Europe made something for itself to be very proud of this history. And what is the very special thing of this Renaissance and these genius people like Michelangelo, da Vinci? They had no problem at all to combine art, culture, technology, creativity, policy. They were living this as a very natural continuum. And I think this is something that we really might draw a lot of inspiration that we desperately need. And I think this is again what important idea of this platform for humanism is, of course, bringing together these different areas. We need more exchange and more discussion. And it's not only because of the perspectives that we need onto technology to refocus our perspective to make technology again more humane or more human-centered. I think it's also for the sake of technology and the further also commercial purposes of technology. Because I mean, I'm in this business, I have to say I'm quite old now. I'm for several decades working with art and technology and working with internet, with robotics and all this. And I vividly remember a time when just talking about these things was immediately exciting because it was always a huge universe of opportunities. But when we look at the tech discourse now, I mean, it's about money, 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 money. It's about commercial opportunities. And on the other side, about all the problems that it created. But we have totally lost these empowering, inspiring perspectives. I mean, this is why we humans invent technology, because we want to enrich our possibilities and not just enrich a few people who have the means to earn a lot of money. And considering that this whole development from digital technology being a tool technology to a cultural technology, where we not only have social media, but we have a social space. It's a public space. It's no longer suitable that we have almost a kind of digital feudalism, a few monopolies, private monopolies, owning something that has become a public space. And of course, there's a lot of conflict into it, how to solve this. But this is why we need a platform where all these different areas come together and discuss possible solutions.
Thank you so much, Gerfried. Well, you've mentioned something hugely important, which is we need to draw on the wisdom of the past, because interdisciplinarity is clearly the future. So now that we've established the context in which we operate, I would like to dedicate the second round of questions to work our way from the abstract to the tangible. So how can we really break up those silos of art, tech, and policy to create a common understanding of what it means to be human in the digital age? Digital humanism works in concert with the establishment of global policy frameworks for technology, but where regulation acts after the fact, multi-stakeholder initiatives like the GRID want to engage with technologists at an early stage during the research and development of new tech products. The same idea of art thinking in tech could be translated to the process of policymaking, and I'd like to open this round with Gerfried and just ask him a follow-up question. Since you're the expert in this field, can you walk us through the process of how to introduce art thinking into both tech companies and government?
I think it's a very easy point, actually. I mean, we all have been learning about design thinking, and I think we all appreciate the power of design thinking to narrow down a problem to the best solution. But what are we going to do when it's not about narrowing down, but widening up? And I'm coming back to the perspectives that Eric was putting in the discussion so nicely. This is what we need. And it doesn't matter whether we look at established companies and industries who are struggling with opening their mind to really be able to think about not just how to solve today's problem, but how to avoid tomorrow's problems, and even more so, how to create opportunities for the day after tomorrow. So what we need is widening up the perspective. And it would be, of course, way too long to really start to explain and mention all the reasons why art is perfectly suited. The main reason is art itself is an endeavor of curiosity, of bold steps, and risking to be wrong in your position for the sake to get a better perspective. And this is a type of risk-taking that is very difficult. And I think one of the crises of our time is not only the trust crisis, but it's also the risk-taking crisis. Because to be innovative needs free space. But free space to exist needs trustability, needs a frame in which you can allow yourself to think freely. And art is a very good environment to kick people's mind. It's a very good environment to give people this comfort that you also need to go beyond your usual realm, to not only look beyond the garden fence, but really boldly step behind it. And it's not so much us convincing institutions, companies, industry to go into art thinking. It's actually them coming to us. And I think this is a very good indication. There is a very big need for new perspectives, and many people in many areas are seeing this, this necessity and seeing the opportunity that art, in this combination again, art seen as one element in this triumph of art, technology, and society, that this is actually a very powerful tool.
Wonderfully put, clearly. Art is a catalytic force. We need more risk-taking, more will to experiment. This brings me to my next question, that is about another experimental approach to something that is pretty much set in stone, or has been pretty much set in stone for centuries. So tech diplomacy is an important pillar for Open Austria. The Austrian Foreign Ministry has most recently appointed my dear colleague Martin Raufbauer as the first Austrian tech ambassador to Silicon Valley. He was instrumental in spearheading a variety of initiatives on behalf of the European Union in Silicon Valley, including the conception and implementation of the grid. And the grid is a project where traditional soft power tools such as art and culture meet this novel way of approaching tech diplomacy. And that's really instigating a completely new dialogue with the tech industry on equal footing. So the grid, one could say, is a practical example of how to include interdisciplinarity into diplomacy. Eric, in your capacity as Executive Vice President for Government Affairs at Salesforce, and the way I know you as a person, you truly perfectly fit the description of a tech diplomat, only that you're working within tech. And it clearly requires a special set of skills, namely the art of translation between different worlds, different cultures, and constantly changing operational contexts. It's the art of finding commonalities rather than focusing on the differences. And most hurdles, as you pointed out yourself, can be overcome by communicating better, listening to each other, trying to understand the other side. So my question to you would be, how could corporate tech culture adapt the premise of new digital humanism in order to accommodate a more interdisciplinary approach to technology that assures the inclusion of the civil society?
Oh, Clara, thank you so much for that. And, you know, bottom line, picking up from what Gerhard was saying and the ambassador was saying is, yes, I think that the work that the Grid and Open Austria are doing, it is helpful for the tech sector. And for the reasons we've already discussed, there needs to be an increased focus on how to apply a humanistic approach to design, how to ensure an ethical understanding and an ethical use of technology. And this can't be done as an afterthought. It has to be done by design, as a pre-thought. So this is where the collaboration that we're talking about here becomes very, very encouraging and interesting. Artists, policymakers, technologists, working together to just to provide an alternative model to insular thinking that you can risk having. So in that, I find this all really important. And the notion of reaching out to a range of stakeholders, it's not new to Salesforce. I'm glad to say that. It's been part of the model that Mark Benioff had for the company when starting it over 20 years ago of thinking about what is now known as stakeholder capitalism. But to spell it out, it's of course not only your shareholders, but also your employees and communities and governments, civil society for sure, academia. And the point of all of this is to get beyond silo thinking. It is to recognize that you're always learning, and you need to feel comfortable that you will be stronger when you're open to dialogue and to criticism, right? That will help you, even when it's hard to work through it, but it will make you better and stronger in what you do as you truly support and serve those stakeholders in a more sustainable way as a company and for the communities that you're in. So this just brings us back to the interest that we've all been talking about other perspectives and how to break through the preconceptions that you may have about what you're doing and what your challenges are. And I welcome it. And to the point so well said by Gertrude, there is, whether you approach this intersection from whatever viewpoint you're coming at it from, whether it's from the policy side or the artistic side or the technology side, you're going to get new insights and you're going to be more effective from that.
Thank you so much, Eric. Well, Salesforce has clearly proven to be, again, a trailblazer in this sphere. I'd like to move on at this point to the policy realm, again, to Ambassador Lambrinidis. Well, clearly, we are operating in this very difficult conundrum that regulation is by definition happening after the fact, but with this rapidly increasing, accelerating speed and technology, we kind of feel like we need to reinvent a couple of things. We need to work more preemptively, as Gertrude and Eric have pointed out, work with different stakeholders to anticipate possible positive and negative impact of technology. So this is what makes this conversation so exciting. And I also want to thank South by Southwest for making this happen, because it's not every day that we get to meet people outside of our usual silos. So Ambassador, what opportunities do you see in global hubs of influence such as Brussels and Silicon Valley, respectively, to break down these silos of art, tech, policy, and allow artists and also citizens to have their voices heard as policy is being shaped?
Well, I will start my answer with my big fat Greek wedding moment, which is just comprised of two parts: Techni, which means art, and logos, which means reason. Isn't it amazing? Technology includes in it art. It is the reason, in fact, that comes out of art potentially. That is what the word implies. There is no contradiction with those two things. And citizens from ancient times knew this. Maybe we forgot it in recent times a little bit once in a while, but here's what we do now. We try as Europe to support and to create platforms where, in fact, artists can be seen as valued catalyst, I should say, for turning technical knowledge into new products, new services that are human-centric. The grid, as you mentioned, is a classic example. The first project we support in the US itself, the European Commission itself directly involved in that support, and the dialogue that the grid is creating on the nexus of technology, art, innovation is unparalleled. And several years ago, we also initiated what we call the STARTS platform, which again, in a sense, tries to bring together out-of-the-box thinking, which might have been the in-the-box thinking of maybe a few years or maybe a couple of centuries ago, but now it's considered out-of-the-box thinking of getting artists and technologists together. One of the things that we do, for example, is that we fund artists to be residents in science environment and vice versa. We fund scientists to go to artist studios. I mean, that is the kind of thing that does, trying to encourage those kinds of connections. The final thing I would say is we're just at the baby steps, the first steps of what is a new European Bauhaus project. We're looking at the climate change, and we're thinking at our cities and at our homes and how it is that we can design them to be sustainable and functional and beautiful and comfortable. That intersection is so important to us, and it's an open process. People will have the opportunity to jump in and throw in their ideas, their projects. I fully encourage our American friends here listening to this, American artists, American architects, others, to look into this, to participate in this. We have made climate change, we have made combating climate change the biggest priority of the European Union. And we'll walk down that path. And we want to walk with citizens, and we want to walk harnessing the brilliance of technology and art in one space. Let's hope we can do it. Let's hope. I mean, hope dies last.
I love that. Let's be optimistic about the future and also the potential of technology, not be guided by fear. I love those thoughts, and clearly there's a huge alliance of values underlying our US-EU relationships. I would like to kick off this third and unfortunately final round of questions to envision the future, to talk about the path forward, ideas, experimentation, everything that could flourish in the years to come. Gerfried, our Austrian Foreign Minister, Mr. Schallenberg, has announced this year's Ars Electronica Festival will award a special prize for digital humanity. It emphasizes in equal terms the humaneness and the humanism that must dictate the development of new technologies. These are truly groundbreaking approaches to cultural diplomacy, where artists work as cultural ambassadors advocating for digital humanism. And awards are in general an enormous opportunity to showcase the path forward by challenging the status quo on a global stage, like this one at South by Southwest. We will be awarding the first EVE Award by the Grid to a project called AI Storytelling, a collaborative project by a European artist and an American technologist. The story behind this is that on Valentine's Day of last year, the Open Austria Art and Tech Lab matched European best-selling author Daniel Kehlmann with American philosopher and technologist Brian McCann to work on natural language processing algorithm control in order to explore a novel mode of storytelling that integrates artificial intelligence as a collaborator in the literary process. And there's many interesting aspects about this project, but the one that really strikes me as particular is the fact that this is a highly unconventional match, right? We've matched a traditional artist, like a writer, and an AI researcher, and together, both of them broke out of their silos and something magical happened. So now to phrase this within a question, in your opinion, what are the factors and ingredients, say the professional prerequisites or profiles that are going to determine successful interdisciplinary collaboration based on a new digital humanism?
That's a very good question, because basically 2 words would be enough, but of course I'm talking more about this. I mean, the 2 words are openness and respect. I think a very important point, and this is also that we see as an achievement of great programs like the STARTS program that is running now for so many years already, is that we really have achieved to go beyond this point where the scientists expect the artists to do some nice design for them, and the artist is hoping the scientists might solve some technical problems. I think we really reached this point where we see when we openly approach these collaborations, we can gain much more of it. And what we gain is actually not so much the actual product of this collaboration, but the energy that unfolds, that starts to radiate when these 2 elements, these 2 worlds come together. And of course, so we need this open-mindedness and we need this mutual respect, which of course, in terms of what is necessary, of course, it's necessary to have standards of quality. I mean, we are bringing together 2 areas that are highly professional. The sciences and the arts, these are people who have been devoting their life, their careers to become an expert in the various fields of art or in science. So bringing these people together, of course, means also as an organizer of these kinds of events, of a facilitator, you have a very high responsibility because you really have to deliver a professional environment and you have to let them work. So it's not something where you can choose the outcome. And I think for both for art and science, there is a very simple thing to say, or that might sound simple, but I think is extremely important. They can only be useful when they are allowed to be totally useless. The moment when we ask art to deliver some solution for a new innovation, a product, or a scientific topic, the moment when we ask them and charge them with this responsibility, we just destroy the very power of it. And I think this is very equally the same thing. Another thing that is equally, of course, the same is curiosity. I mean, this is what these two groups of experts bring so nicely on the table. And when you have, so to say, the double package of curiosity, then you create this energy that really can create an impact into areas that are usually not so curious, not so bold, not so risk-taking, like the industry, or very often, of course, also politics and policy making. And I think a very important point is also, and you have been proving this perfectly well with the setup. I mean, I had the chance to know about this before we talked, and I'm totally excited about the people that you choose and the two areas that you were combining. And what you made perfectly right is this, maybe it's one of the secrets of this collaboration. You have to bring people together and put them in a very uncertain situation. You have to make sure that none of the partners is in his or her territory, because that's the way how you put them on the same eye level. And in the same way as we would have to go out on a lake that is frozen and we don't really know, is it thick enough? The moment we go there, we would, because of the uncertainty, we would take each other's hands. We would look at each other. We would consult with each other. Do you think it's fine to go this way? So creating this moment of uncertainty is, of course, a very powerful strategy to foster innovation.
My God, so much to follow up on there. The moment of uncertainty, I love the fact that what really constitutes a relationship on equal footing is to draw everyone out of their comfort zone and put everyone equally in this moment of uncertainty, and to really focus on process-driven projects rather than having a precise, a very concrete goal in mind that can really destroy this experiment, this creative process, and allow for other avenues to be discovered. I also wanted to mention that the STARTS program, that is an excellent initiative, is also a stakeholder of the grid. So kudos to the STARTS program and to Electronica.
Gerfried, a final follow-up question here. I'm sometimes confronted with artists' often legitimate concerns that their creative potential is being exploited by companies for PR purposes, a whitewashing of sorts.
Can you tell us more about this?
I think companies who just think of, well, maybe we could, find some artists and do some nice projects and then everything is fine. This is totally wrong. And this also won't lead to something. I think it's not working at all. This is maybe in the advertising department. And this is why I'm again so happy about the example that you set with the IF Award and the collaboration that you put up here between the technologist and philosopher on one side and the great writer on the other side. Because this is not about just making a nice statement and about whitewashing. It was about really challenging both things. So when a serious artist approaches scientists, technologists, industries, it's always about putting a challenge. And I think taking up this challenge is a much greater benefit for the companies, for the industries, for the research departments than just getting a nice PR thing. And what I want to emphasize is this is really, for me, the very exciting thing on the project that you have been doing. And this is also what the STARTS program is doing. It's not just a promotion for European Union and companies doing something with artists. It's a really serious project and a serious endeavor. And this is what I think it's important to know. When you go in this adventure, it's sometimes rough, but the benefits are really high.
That is excellent. Let's be challenged. That's a wonderful way to look at the future. I'd like to give the spotlight to the tech sector, back to Eric. In particular, Salesforce, the grid's first tech partner, you had very early on recognized the potential and the necessity for interdisciplinary collaboration by reaching out to governments, local communities, and more importantly, the civil society. You've shown that you're truly invested into this new form of dialogue between multiple stakeholders that you call stakeholder capitalism. This is actually the heart of digital humanism. And I'd like to ask, what motivated Salesforce and you personally to support the grid? And what potential do you see from a private sector perspective for our common endeavor to expand on a global scale?
Well, thanks so much, Clara. It's interesting. We've had so many conversations about the grid and the reasons for being excited about this, and part of that does come back to the many years that I've enjoyed working on international matters and building the deeper personal human relationships that get you beyond politics and geopolitics, and seeing how as you do that and as you deepen your understanding of people's perspectives, it can smooth out volatility, and it can also show that sometimes initial perceptions you may have of difference are greater than the reality, and it's valuable to have those bridges. So that's important. It's important to reflect on that, particularly with this moment of time that we're in, where things feel very polarized in many places, and so it's a really even more important moment for the grid. And as you mentioned, we've talked about this, the importance to understand different people, reach out beyond your comfort zone, engage, and really work to understand different views, different experiences, and this is critical. This is just critical. So this belief was very much part of what has inspired the interest that you at Open Austria and UNIC, Salesforce, that we've had to drive this work forward, to bring worlds together, to bring perspectives together, artists, technologists, transatlantic communities, for sure. And we've talked about it before, but breaking these silos down, also it just helps this creative and this humanistic aspect of technology, as the ambassador prepared us for this so well, and make sure that we're not losing that, and that the technology aspect of art should not be overlooked. So I think of this partnership as a celebration of a more human-centered and creative approach to technology, and that if we can help even more people experience that, that's a great benefit. You know, you've created a platform here, you've created a community to explore different ways for seeing how technology could be beautiful and human and accessible. And this is more important now during COVID than ever before, as we are doing this panel and we are living in what feels like a virtual first environment at times. We need to be reminded that even in times of a great crisis, that there's a community of people from around the world that are striving to help one another, bring understanding to the forefront, and in the ways that we've seen, such as being celebrated by the Eve Award, you can create beauty that will lift people up when they're down. And we all have needed that this year, for certain.
Oh yeah, I can echo those thoughts 100%. Thank you so much. And Eric, perhaps your final statement here. Also, if you'd like to expand on the Eve Award.
What comes to my mind as we're concluding our conversation today is the year in which the grid has come into formation. And it's obviously been an incredibly challenging year, tragic in so many ways. And at the same time, there's been inspiration as you have seen resilience, as you've seen adaptation, as you've seen people help each other and learn to do things in different ways. And indeed, the way that the grid this year has flourished is very different from what you had planned and expected. And the fact that we're all gathering here today at South by Southwest in this format shows that resilience and that adaptation. And so I just close with that as inspiration, that we can change, learn, do things in new and different ways, and much faster than we ever thought possible. And that can apply to all of the great challenges, whether it is the greatest challenge of climate and how we can be resilient and adapt and change and do it faster than we thought possible, to, of course, the conversations on technology and humanism in technology that I was talking about. So in this year that has brought so many challenges, I just conclude with that optimism, that inspiration that we can be resilient and we can learn from each other and we can move fast and fix things.
Well, thank you, Eric. I couldn't have said it better myself.
So, Ambassador, for a final question, you've already touched on the geopolitical dimension of this intersection of art, tech, and policy, also the strategic partnership based on a commonality of values between the European Union and the United States. So looking towards the future, it seems like we need to be agile and constantly inventing new tools for international diplomacy. You're clearly the highest ranking European diplomat in the United States, a representative to all of us. It's clear that we need to strengthen the strategic partnership between Europe and the United States. Do you believe that there is a need also for diplomacy to adapt, to perhaps include soft power tools like art and culture more intensely, more strategically, and to also implement new approaches like tech diplomacy? And there's even ways to fuse those two, not see them as two different branches, but have a reinvent perhaps a cultural tech diplomacy or something. Could this strengthen our EU-US relations on technology facing the future?
Yes, it could. And thank you, Clara. And by the way, I'm going around saying Clara, Eric, Gertfried, and everyone calls me ambassador, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm just launching a small protest here. I could use your official titles as well. But listen, I'll answer this very quickly by turning it personal, and showing how in my real life as the EU ambassador of the US, art and diplomacy have intertwined in a very unique way. When I came into the EU residence, the ambassador's home in Washington, the walls were empty. There was no art on them. And I had to decide what to do with that. And one thing I could do, I suppose, was to try to put some European art on. And I tried a little bit. I asked different embassies in Washington to give me perhaps a piece of art each to put in. And then I realized pretty soon that they were going down to their basements looking for that one piece that they were not using themselves to give me, which is absolutely fine. It's still generous, but it wasn't the kind of thing. And then I got this epiphany. Of course, it makes sense for an ambassador to portray their country, their culture through their art in their home, except in my case, I represent 27 countries. So I decided I'm going to flip the script. Instead of having sort of my home serve as a mirror reflecting myself, I would try to turn into sort of a window connecting me with the country in which I've come to serve and I so admire, and so many Europeans do. So I reached out to two museums. One is the San Angelo Museum of Fine Arts in Texas, and the other one is the American Visionary Art Museum in Baltimore, and it has self-taught outsider artists. the thematics, especially of the second exhibit, which I just put in a couple of months ago, resilience. If you think of how these artists are creating this art, and the materials out of which they're doing it at a time of COVID. But resilience, isn't that also what the EU was founded on? Isn't what the US was founded on? And the moment I put that art up, not only did it make my home beautiful, but it also sent a message to every interlocutor that I have as a diplomat, from citizens to neighbors to politicians in Washington to business people, that I'm not here to simply tell people why they should love the European Union. I'm here to tell people why Europeans love and respect America. And there was no better way for me to do that than to use art. And I am proud of that. It's a small example. There are millions of examples of how art is a soft power that also projects values and thoughts and feelings and inspires, that you see all over the world. Absolutely, we should be using art as an element of diplomacy, and using technology as well as an element of diplomacy. The kind of technology that is producing the vaccines today. I mean, isn't that an amazing example of American-European cooperation? The Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, an American company and a European company getting together and producing the first certified supremely effective vaccine out there. Isn't our effort to get that vaccine all over the world, not just to keep it, of course, for our citizens, makes sense, but through the World Health Organization, the COVAX facility, to ensure that even poor people out there should have it? Isn't that what you try to do for technology as well? Technology has to reach all corners of the world, and it hasn't. It's still the privileged ones that use it, and sometimes abuse it and misuse it. I mean, boy, art and technology together, they can change the way that we work. I so like the thin ice example of Gottfried, and also the emphasis on meeting people of Eric. I mean, art can bring us together. That's how we meet today. It's the new public space, the new public square. That technology does that. We bring them together, we break the silos, we have a better world ahead of us. Thank you to the grid for all this. Thank you to everyone for all this. And I hope that the European Union can be a strong partner in this effort. I really do.
Well, excellent. In that spirit, I think everything has been said.
This concludes our South by Southwest panel on a new digital humanism, art meets tech meets policy, hosted by Open Austria on behalf of the grid. Thank you, Ambassador Lambrinidis, Eric Löb, and Gerhard Stocker for joining today's most excellent conversation about the necessity to welcome uncertainty, curiosity, and open experimentation into our respective silos of art, tech, and policy, so we can positively shape the future of technology. If we take digital humanism as our North Star guiding us through the challenges ahead, we'll be prepared to yet again get excited about tech innovation without ignoring its pitfalls. I'd also like to use this opportunity to thank the grid's many stakeholders, collaborators, and supporters around the world. A special thanks to you, dear audience. And with that, I say thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure to get on the grid.